Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into why an ancient text, one that's often dismissed as just the Old Testament, is actually argued to be the foundational blueprint of Western culture, history, and theology. You know, if you think these writings are just dusty relics, get ready to look at them through a completely new lens.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by rethinking the Old Testament, then explore a geographic testing ground, look at the cultural fingerprint, discuss the foundation of the new, and finally wrap up with study as worship. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Rethinking the Old Testament and challenging our assumptions. Let me ask you something. When you hear the word old in our modern culture, what instantly comes to mind? Let's be real. It usually feels like a synonym for obsolete, right? Like it's out of date or just something we can comfortably toss aside. But here's the thing. Simply reframing how we title this text changes absolutely everything. Calling it the Old Testament kind of implies it's been replaced or discarded. But if we shift that to First Testament, wow, that completely reframes our view. Suddenly, it goes from being something irrelevant to the actual original bedrock that everything new is built upon. To push this perspective even further, we can look at the Jewish community. They use the acronym Tanakh. This stands for Torah, which means teaching, Navim, the prophets, and Ketuvim, the writings. This structure makes a really crucial point. We aren't just dealing with one single old book here. It's actually a dynamic, incredibly diverse library packed with history, poetry, and law. Moving on to Section 2, a geographic testing ground, or the where of the First Testament. Let's do a quick multiple choice exercise pulling straight from our source material. Think about this. Why exactly was the physical land of Israel called the testing ground of faith? Was it option 1, just because the Torah demanded obedience? Option 2, a rich abundance of resources that tested their memory in times of plenty? Option 3, being a precarious land bridge dependent on rain? Or option 4, was their faith mostly tested in places like Egypt and Babylon? Well, the source points us right to option 3. The text actually portrays God as intentionally planting the Israelites in this incredibly vulnerable geopolitical bottleneck. And agriculturally, it was super fragile. Their survival literally depended entirely on these marginal amounts of rainfall. According to the source, this setup forced a daily physical reliance on God, which turned the land into a literal testing ground. Pretty fascinating, right?
All right, Section 3, the cultural fingerprint and how it shaped Western civilization.
Take a second to absorb this fantastic quote from the German poet Goethe. He said, "If you don't know 3,000 years of your heritage, you're living hand to mouth." And it's so true. Even if you approach the First Testament from a completely secular standpoint, functioning as a fully educated member of Western society is almost impossible if you don't understand the 3 millennia of heritage rooted right in these exact writings. To really drive Goethe's point home, let's do a rapid-fire cultural quiz. Think about some of our greatest visual masterpieces. You absolutely need First Testament literacy to decipher them. Imagine Rembrandt's intensely dramatic painting of Abraham and Isaac, or that classic motif of Jacob physically wrestling an angel in the dead of night, or King Saul, consumed by paranoid jealousy, clutching a spear while David plays the harp. The bottom line is, if you don't know the text, you simply can't read the art. And it goes way beyond the visual arts. Just consider Handel's musical masterworks. Now, we all know he wrote the famous Messiah, sure. But his audience back in the day was so culturally literate that he wrote entire, massive oratorios based on First Testament figures. We're talking Samson, Solomon, Esther, Belshazzar. It's no exaggeration to say this text is quite literally the sheet music of Western cultural history. That brings us to Section 4, Foundation of the New, focusing on theological continuity and fulfillment. The renowned scholar F.F. Bruce captures this continuity perfectly. He notes that in Jesus, all those ancient promises, from the covenant with Abraham all the way to the suffering servant described in Isaiah 53, are entirely confirmed. The source argues that every single concept of salvation, sacrifice, and priesthood introduced in the First Testament reaches its ultimate climax in the New. It's presented as one continuous, truly breathtaking story. Now, you might hear the word adumbrations tossed around, which is really just a fancy, scholarly term for foreshadowings. The source points out that the Apostle Paul, who was literally trained as a rabbi, saw the First Testament as absolutely packed with these. He'd look at ancient historical events like the Exodus paradigm, the Passover lamb, or even manna and drinking from a rock in the desert, and he viewed them as direct types, essentially exact examples and warnings for spiritual life. In this view, the past is totally a prologue. Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Study as Worship, and the concept of avodah. There's this incredibly profound Hebrew word, avodah. It beautifully merges two concepts that, let's be honest, we usually keep completely separate: work and worship. The source suggests that when you're approaching an intense text like the First Testament, the academic work of studying it actually isn't separate from spiritual life at all. Using your intellect is a vital, essential part of engaging with the divine. To illustrate this, the source points straight to the book of 2 Peter, which outlines this exact kind of avodah. It lays out a step-by-step progression to build character. It basically says, hey, don't just stop at faith. You've got to add goodness to it. And then it takes real, intentional work to add knowledge to that goodness, which is then followed by self-control and then perseverance. It is described as a highly active, intellect-driven exercise.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. Knowing that this ancient tradition views intense academic study as a literal form of worship, how does that change your perspective? Whether you're coming at this academically or spiritually, how might merging your intellect with this massive ancient heritage transform your own worldview? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me. Keep asking great questions, and I'll catch you in the next one.